workers world for having this incredible event. I had something kind of generic that I wanted to talk about today, but as I sat down and I listened to every presenter, I realized that we can link every single struggle that has been talked about so far, and I'm sure any struggle that will be talked about after me, to Palestine. I'll start with the LGBT community, with pinkwashing, how Israel always pinkwashes that community to say, look at us, we're the only democracy in the Middle East, and we treat that community much better than any of our neighbors in the region, and that is called pinkwashing. Second one, exploitation of workers. The laundry workers union, I'm not sure, I'm not going to be able to tell you the exact names, I'm sorry, but I did listen very carefully to all your presentations. Exploitation of Palestinian workers who sometimes have to build that wall that separate themselves from their lands, and that's exploitation, and not only of Palestinian workers, but African migrants, asylum seekers in what is called Israel, or what I would like to call it as Palestine, of course. Number three, the housing, right? We had somebody speak about housing and the Harlem explosion and control or rent stabilization and all that, and how we want to gentrify. Well, we have that in Palestine. We have settlements, illegal settlements, and we have house demolitions. We see that on a very daily basis. Number four, disability. So, you know, you can say that with everything that Israel does to Palestinians, disability is a very common thing for Palestinians, whether it's mental disability or physical disability. Not too long ago, two young Palestinian men who were soccer players, who I think were going, you know, back from their soccer practice or something, were shot intentionally in their legs so that they may never play soccer again. And you know, this is a right to be able to practice something like sports. So we have that as well. And I loved when this woman here talked about incarceration as a disability, because that's something that we see very much in Palestine, and I do absolutely agree with that. Incarceration, and many Palestinians, it is very common to be detained as a Palestinian. In fact, many people in my family, in my extended family, will tell you that they've spent an X amount of time in Israeli detention, almost always indefinite, almost always no charge, just because they happen to be Palestinian. In my own town, you'll have people, or you have raids, you know, of the town, and they'll just kind of like do this collection of people just on the street. You know, just unintended, no motivation whatsoever, just because you happen to be Palestinian, walking down your street, and they just want to take you in. They won't tell you for how long. You'll be tortured. You'll be imprisoned for a while. You may not be able to talk to your family for a while. So thank you for mentioning that as well. Number five, and I believe that with that I have talked about every single presenter so far. Number five, imperialist plunder. So, you know, we have takeover of lands, obviously uprooting of trees. We have expansion of illegal settlements, as I've said, implanting foreign plant life, and I think many people don't even know this, that a lot of the plant life that, these organizations or whatever the government promotes is actually foreign to the ecosystem, and it actually harms. So if you want to even take it from an environmental standpoint, you know, the occupation of Palestine is very bad on an environmental level, on any level, of course, but on an environmental level. I want to give you guys some numbers here. 82,000 murdered in the last 13 years, 50 in the last 9 months, 25,000 house demolitions have happened, 1.5 million olive trees have been uprooted, okay? And olive oil is a staple in Palestinian homes. Every single Palestinian family will tell you that, you know, even if they don't, you know, live off of their oil or their olive trees, that's what they use, and it's a very common staple, and it's kind of like the lifeline of Palestinians. I don't have that much time, but I also wanted to say for detention, 800,000 detainees since 1967, and those are political prisoners. Speaking of political prisoners, I want to talk about someone called Rasmiya Aude. If you haven't heard of her, you should know that she was arrested last year on basis that she did immigration fraud, because she did not mention on her immigration application that she was detained by Israel many years ago. But like I said, this is a very common thing in Palestine, and she was a political prisoner at the time. And if anybody was to mention that, you would have no immigration from Palestine to the United States. Unfortunately, she was indicted, and I would ask you guys to please make sure that you follow her case, because it's very important. This is an attack on Palestinian activism in the United States. And this is a concern for all of us as activists and as people who work together. So please make sure that you follow her case. You can follow with the National Lawyers Guild, because she's being represented by one of those lawyers. And you can also refer to the Stop FBI Repression Coalition. And one more thing, since I am from Al-Awda, I have to say that if you haven't been aware of what's happened with us on a very local level, Al-Awda national, not just New York, but national, has been attacked and is being sued by someone who claimed that he was assaulted at one of our demonstrations. And again, this is another attack on activism, especially around Palestine. And it's very important that we all band together. I hope that you guys have heard about it. Please make sure that you are aware, and you go to our website at Al-Awda, newyork.org. That's al-awda, awdany.org, and follow. And if you want, we can talk about it in the discussion. But I don't have that much time to talk about all of the things that I wanted to talk about. But I really want to thank Workers World for putting this together, and I want to thank everybody who's spoken before me. And I look forward to the discussion and everybody else who's going to speak after me. Thank you so much. I again want to thank Workers World for putting together this really incredible event, and I'm glad, I actually decided to come very last minute, but I'm very glad that I could be here. And I definitely want to thank all the women that have spoken up here, and everybody who's made comments and brought very important insight into the discussion. And I agree that this really did feel like a discussion more so than, anything else. I wanted to say that, in Palestine, it's unfortunately, it's kind of like a crime to be Palestinian in Palestine. That's how much it is. You could be in the West Bank or in Gaza, but especially in the West Bank. In Gaza in general. Who was it? The woman who said that she's been to Gaza. It really is like an open air prison. In the West Bank, for example, like I said, I've had family members who've been detained indefinitely for many years, some of them. My mother herself, I should have actually talked a lot about my mother, because my mother didn't finish college because of the first intifada that shut down all of the universities in Palestine, at least the Palestinian universities. My mother came here without a college education. She came with 4 children, and she didn't speak much English. She now has a bachelor's degree and a master's degree and is a teacher at a public school. And she is just one example of many Palestinian women who fight in many ways. Palestinian women who will birth at checkpoints, Palestinian women who will birth in detentions. We talked a lot about, Mother and Earth and spring, and how spring is like a metaphor to motherhood. Palestinian women whose husbands are in Iran because they're detained, some of them for life and serving many life sentences, who will smuggle sperm so that they can keep giving on birth, because, like I said, just being a Palestinian is a crime, unfortunately, in Palestine. Women were part of the demonstrations against settlements as early as 1884. It's not 1948 that Israel sprung up. It was much earlier than that, and they were very, part of these demonstrations against colonialism and imperialism in Palestine. And some of you guys have mentioned specific struggles and specific names, and I want to mention one name that I remember a few years ago during, I believe, the second Intifada. This is a woman that I've never met, but is a cousin of my cousins, and she was murdered going to school. She was a young mother of 2 children, and she was in a taxi. You know, in Palestine it's very common to do carpooling, so many will all get into one taxi until it fills up, so that that's very economical, and it saves money and time and gas. That car was stopped at a checkpoint, and the claim was that car did not stop when it was asked by the IDF to stop at the checkpoint, and as a result it fired. The IDF soldiers that were manning that checkpoint fired at that car and killed that young woman whose name is Kamila Sawalha, and she was just trying to go to school that day. She was going to university. I just wanted to mention her because that name rings really very much into my head, and I want to mention once more Rasmia Ode, who is very instrumental in the Chicago community. She's won awards for her leadership and for being a huge member of that community, not just serving the Arab community or the Palestinian community, but all communities in Chicago. And she's been incriminated, because many years ago, like I said, she was detained by Israel and is facing, deportation, 10 years and deportation. I really hope that you guys follow her case. Thank you so much for having all of us. And have a good night. Thank you very much.
Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine!